So good morning, everyone. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
We thought it was important for us to this morning to reaffirm how close the coordination between France and the United Kingdom has been over the past 3 years. In particular, over the past 3 months, there's been closer and closer coordination between our two leaders and our two governments. And in fact, last Thursday in Paris, where the 5th meeting of the Coalition of the Willing took place, our partners and friends, united in support of Ukraine, entrusted President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer with the role of coordinating the efforts of this coalition. What's the situation today? Well, 3 weeks ago, Ukraine made an important compromise and accepted a ceasefire without any condition brokered by our US partners. Over the past 3 weeks, Russia has been flip-flopping, continuing its strikes on energy infrastructure, continuing its war crimes. Today, Russia owes an answer to the United States that have worked very hard to come up with a mediation effort and a ceasefire proposal. They have to come up with an answer. It has to be yes, it has to be no, and it has to be a quick answer. In this context, and on last Thursday, coalition partners entrusted President Macron, Prime Minister Starmer, with the role of coordinating their efforts. Effort in the direction of building up support to Ukraine to add pressure on Russia, support with sanctions on Russia, support with financial help, but also military support. And a number of our NATO partners yesterday reaffirmed a number of commitments they've made or announced new commitments. France announced a 2 billion euros worth of military support to Ukraine last Thursday in the presence of President Zelensky. Second, our teams are working closely together to support US-led effort to reach a ceasefire by putting together scenarios for the monitoring of such a ceasefire in order to facilitate these efforts when the ceasefire is reached. Third, our teams, alongside teams of our colleagues of other coalition countries, are working to prepare for efforts needed to make sure that the peace, whenever it's reached, can be lasting. And this means building a very strong Ukrainian army that is going to be the first layer of any guarantee or any guaranteed peace in a lasting sense. And second, there will be at some point need for military capacity or reassurance whenever peace is reached. And this is the reason why our army chiefs will be in Kyiv today in order to advance this work, because our goal is to reach peace and for this peace to be just and to be lasting. David?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Jean-Noel. It's a testament to the strength of the UK-France relationship that we have been working so closely together over this period. It was 76 years ago that the United Kingdom and France united to form NATO, and today we come together once again to continue and ensure that NATO over this next 76 years is a fairer institution, is a stronger institution, and is an institution that is more lethal as we deal with the threats that face us across the Euro-Atlantic area. We're united as two countries, and we will leave this NATO gathering of foreign ministers more united than we've been for many years in the face of the threats that face us. And of course, we continue to work together, bringing together an alliance of the willing as we focus in on an enduring peace that lasts and keeps the Euro-Atlantic area safe. It was France and the UK that came together to provide Ukraine with long-range strike capabilities needed to face down this assault from Russia. And as we have heard, it is still the case that our judgment is that Putin continues to obfuscate, continues to drag his feet. He could accept a ceasefire now. He continues to bombard Ukraine, its civilian population, its energy supplies. We see you, Vladimir Putin. We know what you are doing. And that is why we are pledged to continue to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position, militarily, economically, and with the humanitarian context that they need. And we continue to bear down with sanctions on Russia so that they are willing to come to this negotiation actually serious about making the peace that we want to see endure. NATO is an alliance that keeps 1 billion people safe on both sides of the Atlantic, from Tottenham to Toulouse. It is the strongest and the best alliance that we have seen in the modern age. France and the UK continue to be absolutely pivotal to its success, and we will continue to work together over this period as we head and long for an enduring peace that keeps our continent safe. Thank you very much. I think that there are questions. Is it Deutsche Welle?
Secretary Rubio said yesterday that he wants to leave here with a clear understanding that all members of the alliance are on a realistic pathway to spending more, 5% on defense. Is that realistic, and how is this going to happen? Thank you.
I think it was important to hear from Secretary of State Rubio that the Americans are in. They continue to be committed to NATO, and they continue to understand the importance of NATO as an umbrella of security across the Euro-Atlantic area. And of course, we discussed also the partnership that we forged with the Indo-Pacific and the IP4 nations as they also face down threats in their region at this time. It was also important that we see Europeans stepping up over this period. In the United Kingdom, we are stepping up. Prime Minister Starmer has made a commitment for us to get to 2.5% of spending on defence by 2027 and 3% into the next Parliament. It continues, the UK being fundamentally committed with defence spending to this important alliance, and it was good to hear increased pledges from European nations to spend more on defence as we accept a bigger share of the burden over this time. But it's not just about spending, it's about capability. It's about learning from the threats that we've seen in Ukraine. And of course that's why the coalition of the willing is so important. It's about continuing also to help to mobilize training in Ukraine, recognizing that that Eastern Front is the frontier of the fight that we have with Russia. So I'm pleased that we come out of this meeting stronger, and I'm pleased that NATO allies are meeting the moment and stepping up in their contribution to both spending and capability at this time.
Question de l'AFP.
Yes, thank you very much. Question on Ukraine. The peace talk you're referring to, the peace talk led by the United States, are pretty much going nowhere at the moment. So what would you ask Marco Rubio to help this process, this conversation to move in the right direction? And if at the end the deal is not the satisfactory one you want, Can you say no to Donald Trump?
Over the past few weeks, Prime Minister Starmer, President Macron have played a very important role in mediating between Ukrainians and President Trump in order to open up the path for the agreement that was struck 3 weeks ago in Saudi Arabia, where the Ukrainians accepted without any condition to stop fighting, to enter into a ceasefire leading to peace negotiation. Right now, our main problem is that Vladimir Putin is procrastinating, is trying to avoid those peace talks, and our responsibility as friends and partners of Ukraine is to build up the pressure on Vladimir Putin to get him to sit at the negotiation table, but also to make the demonstration that it is the Ukrainians that want peace, but that clearly Vladimir Putin has another idea in mind, and that by striking energy infrastructure, by continuing its war crimes, by announcing last week a new conscription of 160,000 soldiers, the largest conscription over the past 14 years, clearly Vladimir Putin does not seem to have any willingness to enter into a ceasefire and to start peace negotiation. And this should lead all those that are attached to the security of Europe, but also to the Euro-Atlantic security and more generally to world stability, to pile up pressure on Vladimir Putin for him to finally sit down and start talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For a second, you can ask tariffs are going to destabilise this world. When will Great Britain really stand up to American bullying?
Look, the United Kingdom, like France, is a great maritime nation. We are a nation that believes in open trade. And I regret the return to protectionism in the United States, something that we've not seen for nearly a century. As you know, we are consulting with business and industry at this time. We are engaged in discussions with the United States to strike an economic agreement and an economic deal. And of course, we have been absolutely clear that all options are on the table as we ensure the national interests of the British people, who will be very concerned at this time about how this affects the bottom line for them and their economic welfare. We will put their national interests first, and it's in their national interests to be negotiating with the United States an economic agreement at this time, but keeping all options on the table.
Mr. Levy, what's your message for young people?
Our message for young people.
Yes.
Ja, twee dingen. Eén, het feit dat een coalition of the willing, dat er kan worden samengesteld, kan ook juist
Over this period, and here
Halbzeit unseres gemeinsamen NATO-Außenministerinnen-Treffens ist hier klar und deutlich geworden, die NATO schlägt geschlossen miteinander zusammen für unseren Frieden in Europa ein. Und insbesondere der NATO-Ukraine-Rat gestern hat deutlich gemacht, wie stark die Unterstützung für die Ukraine ist. Ein solches Treffen der Geschlossenheit und vor allen Dingen der klaren Bekenntnisse und nicht nur Worte, sondern auch weiteren Zusagen zur finanziellen Unterstützung hat es in den letzten 3 Jahren hier bei der NATO gegenüber der Ukraine aus meiner Sicht in dieser Form noch nicht gegeben. Insbesondere die 20 Milliarden Euro, die in den letzten Wochen zugesagt worden sind. Und gestern gab es weitere Zusagen dazu, dass die europäische Unterstützung massiv für die Ukraine ausgebaut wird, macht deutlich, wir stehen ein für unseren Frieden auf dem europäischen Kontinent. Es kann Frieden nur durch Stärke der Ukraine geben. Es wurde parallel zu diesem NATO-Treffen ja deutlich, dass Putins Worte der Verhandlung derzeit nichts als leere Worte und Versprechen sind. Es hat wieder und erneut Angriffe in der Ukraine gegeben. Und daher ist es umso wichtiger, deutlich zu machen, dass ein echter Frieden, ein dauerhafter Frieden nur erreicht werden kann, wenn wir für diesen Frieden gemeinsam einstehen. Dass wir nicht auf Putins Spiel hereinfallen dürfen, dass auf Zeit gespielt wird, dass immer neue Forderungen in den Raum stellt. Die Ukraine hat deutlich gemacht, sie will einen Waffenstillstand unverzüglich, ohne Vorbedingungen. Und genau das braucht es jetzt in diesem Moment und in dieser Situation.
Dann hat Herr Rubio, der US-Außenminister, anerkannt die finanziellen Leistungen der Europäer. Die Amerikaner fordern 5%. Wie war die Stimmung mit Herrn Rubio gestern? Wie können Sie das beschreiben?
Eine europäische Solidarität in dieser Form für die Ukraine hat es aus meiner Sicht in den letzten Jahren so noch nicht gegeben. Europa hat deutlich gemacht, dass wir für unseren Frieden hier einstehen, und zwar nicht nur in Worten, sondern in Taten. Die Zusagen, die wir in den letzten Wochen hier gemeinsam auf den Tisch gebracht haben, machen deutlich, Frieden kann es nur durch Stärke der Ukraine geben, und wir stehen an der Seite der Ukraine hier gemeinsam ein. Dass der amerikanische Außenminister noch mal unterstrichen hat, dass die NATO unsere gemeinsame Allianz ist, dass wir 75 Jahre NATO gerade gefeiert haben, dass es das stärkste Verteidigungsbündnis in der Welt ist. Das ist sehr, sehr wichtig und zentral. Zugleich haben wir als Europäer sehr deutlich gemacht, dass es jetzt genau darauf ankommt, dass man deutlich macht, dass die NATO für den Frieden hier auf unserem europäischen Kontinent gemeinsam und geschlossen einsteht. Und die Vorbereitung für den Haager Gipfel, sie laufen genau in diesem Aspekt. Der NATO-Generalsekretär hat ja deutlich gemacht, dass wir jetzt durch die weiteren Zusagen, gerade auch von Deutschland, aber von vielen anderen Staaten, auf einem Pfad von über 3% des Bruttoinlandsproduktes aller Europäer sind, dass wir diesen Pfad gemeinsam weitergehen. Manche sind schon deutlich darüber hinaus, und dass das unser aller Sicherheit sichert. Und zwar nicht nur für uns Europäer, sondern die Sicherheit im transatlantischen Raum, die aufs engste verknüpft ist, auch mit der Sicherheit im Indopazifik. Und deswegen sind all diese Investitionen, gerade die verstärkten Investitionen der Europäer, auch Investitionen in die gemeinsame transatlantische Sicherheit und die Stärke dieses transatlantischen Bündnisses.
Guten Morgen, Frau Baerbock. What is your message for young people in NATO countries?
Good morning, great that you are here. This is really great. You're the future of NATO. So the message is, this is our continent in peace, and we will stand up that your generation, that your kids' generation will always live in peace as well, and this is what NATO is standing for.
Thank you so much.
Are you proud to be here?
It's an honor for me to be here to represent my country, Germany, because we have been through the most horrific war times on this European continent, also due to the fascist regime back in time in Germany. And this alliance was founded also that the war of aggression would never come back on the European continent. So my country has a special responsibility, as many other countries, to live in peace together. And may I have a question back? How were you chosen to be here, the reporter?
My parents know.
They are just amazing reporters.
Ah.
Best question.
And you live in Brussels? Or you're from somewhere else?
Netherlands.
Netherlands. Ah, cool. So the big summit will be in your country then,
Yes.
the NATO summit.
They will be there as well.
Well, I won't be there, so you are really lucky because I won't be the foreign minister anymore in Hague. So enjoy the summit then in Hague.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Then
you
you
so
can
much.
ask your question.
Thank you.
Can we have a high five?
Good luck.
So first of all, allow me to say that as we celebrate 76 years since the foundation of NATO, we can confirm after yesterday's meetings that NATO is stronger than ever. This is very much due to the commitment by the Trump administration for finding peace in Ukraine, the willingness of our Ukrainian partners to commit to a peaceful solution, as well as an ongoing effort led by France, the United Kingdom, as well as other allies. Yesterday, what was also very positive is, apart from the engagement with our new American colleague, the ability to speak with him about the challenges that we have to support the U.S. administration in their ongoing efforts for finding peace in Ukraine, to also engage with our partners from the Indo-Pacific, because Russia is the obvious threat that we are all speaking about, but that interplay that exists between Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran also poses an extreme threat to our collective security. It was great to have Ms. Kallas join us yesterday. It's great to have her here again with us today, because the relationship between NATO and the European Union is fundamental for peace and stability in our continent, and even further beyond our continent. Thank you.
Talking of Russia's obvious threat, do you believe that the American government is currently sharing this assessment, or is it seeing Putin and Russia rather as a potential business partner?
I think that the U.S. government is committed to peace. What I can say as a representative of one of the smaller nations on the table, but one of the largest per capita investors in giving aid to Ukraine, is that our aid to Ukraine in various different forms has always been about our defense, about Ukraine's defense, but also about finding peace. And I firmly believe that the current U.S. administration has the right approach, the approach for finding peace, peace that includes Ukraine on board in the process, but peace that also includes bringing us all as NATO allies on board.
Minister, one question. Secretary General Rubio was talking about like the 5% spending yesterday again. Do other NATO allies now have to do whatever the US demands in order like to not risk the relationship with them?
It's not about risking the relationship. It's about the fact that the United States is absolutely right that we need to take our burden of responsibility for peace and security. And 5% might not be achievable overnight, but we need to continue our investments in our defense industries. We need to continue our current investments in our military capacities. And this is the right trajectory that we all need to pursue. It's not just about the bilateral relationship with the United States. It's about investing in security, because without security, you don't have stability. And without adequate security, not just within Europe, but even further beyond, as I said, investing in security in the Indo-Pacific, investing in security in other parts of the world, then we don't have the societies which we've worked very hard to create.
How realistic is it for all allies to get to 5%?
It's not something, as I said, that will be easy. It will be a challenging process, but it is something that we all have to strive for. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Mélanie Joly. I'm the Canadian Foreign Minister. Mélanie Joly, je suis la ministre des Affaires étrangères du Canada. Of course, our goal at NATO right now is to make sure we have strong NATO unity. We talked about many issues, including Ukraine, and of course, the Indo-Pacific. As an Indo-Pacific nation, for us, it is important that we recognize not only that Russia is a threat, but also cooperating with China. And also, we made sure that the Arctic and Arctic security was at the core of our conversations here at NATO. Donc, ici, on a parlé de l'unité nécessaire au sein de l'OTAN et nous avons parlé non seulement de l'Ukraine, mais également de l'importance de l'Indo-Pacifique et de l'Arctique. I can take your questions. Thank you.
Have you got any indications from Secretary Rubio whether the U.S., and if yes, to what extent they are going to continue supporting Ukraine, and have there been any discussions about the coalition of the willing? Thank you.
Yes, so of course, we've talked about Ukraine and we support the negotiations that are held by the U.S. on this very issue. What we want, though, is at one point, Russia needs to come back with a clear position. And we believe that it's important to have a delay on the reaction of Russia towards the ceasefire proposal. So we think that if ultimately they don't agree to that ceasefire, there should be consequences.
You just mentioned Russia as a direct threat. Do you believe that the current U.S. administration also shares this assessment that Russia is a direct threat, or do they see it rather as a potential business partner?
Well, my point to that is it is important that we all agree that Russia is a threat. If not, I don't know why we should always increase more and more defense spending.
Do you think it would be a good idea to set a deadline for Russia agreeing to a ceasefire?
Absolutely, that's my point.
Don't you think Russia's goal is just to create division and create chaos, not to negotiate?
Well, you know, we know that Russia's point has been not only to gain more territory in Ukraine, but also to sow division and weaken Europe and our transatlantic bond. So in that sense, we think that it's a good idea that we work on having a ceasefire and that the U.S. is talking to both Ukraine and at the same time Russia. But at one point, we need to have a decision and there need to be consequences. Ukraine is seeking peace. We want to make sure that Russia is not using this period to have a bit more of an edge in the context of its war of aggression.
What is the concrete roadmap for 5% defense spending?
Well, the U.S. is at 3.2% right now, so we're taking stock of their own defense spending target. But we all know that we're living much more in a dangerous world. And in that sense, we need to do more. Canada is willing to do more, and we have to do more faster. Thank you. You've asked the question. Anybody else?
Do you think that U.S. tariffs have destabilized the world? And how do you think European partners should respond?
So the goal of the president is to do a global reset on trade. And Canada has been dealing with this now for more than 90 days. We're the biggest client of the U.S. by far. We buy more from the U.S. than the UK, France, China, and Japan combined. So for anybody that has been in business before, when you treat your client, your best client, the way we've been treated, well, of course, it means that you want fundamentally to change the way you're operating. So in that sense, in Canada, what we've said is we take stock of what the U.S. has done, and at the same time, we know that the relationship will never be the same again. And that's my message to Europeans. The relationship with the U.S. will never be the same. They want to do things differently, and we understand that. And that's why we will seek to make sure that we get to an agreement on trade, but also on security, because both cannot be siloed. At the same time, what we've said is we understand that President Trump is taking decisions for his own administration and his own people, but he also respects strength. And we've made sure that there were counter tariffs on American products back in Canada. We are now at $60 billion worth of counter tariffs. We announced new counter tariffs on auto yesterday because we think that it is ultimately the best way to get to a good deal eventually. We're putting maximum pressure on the Trump administration, and at the same time, we are finding off-ramps. And the only people on earth that will be able to really have President Trump change course are the Americans themselves. And the Americans now understand that tariffs are a tax on them. And we need to make sure, and Europeans need to make sure, that they take that message to the American people in order to influence the US administration. We're willing to partner with the Europeans on that very issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello. What is your message for young people in NATO countries?
Well, NATO is really important. And not only is it important, and we need to make sure that we all work together. That way, you and your friends will be able to grow in a world that is safe. And when the world is safe, you're able to do what you want, and you're able to basically accomplish your dreams. Is that nice?
Children make worry. Do you make worry over the world?
You asked that children are worried, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes, so I understand that there are lots of worries. And adults also, mom and dads all around the world also have some worries. But I think our job is to make sure that there's less worries and that you can sleep well at night and don't do any nightmare, but actually can dream very well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Can we have a high five?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and happy birthday. NATO is 76 years old today. And for 76 years, this alliance have kept the members safe, both the 12 original ones that Norway belongs to, and also the 32 we have now. So this is a great alliance. And we had a good day yesterday. I was glad that despite of other differences, we were able to focus on what was the topic of the agenda. We reconfirmed that we agree that Russia is the defining threat of this alliance today and in the foreseeable future. We recommitted very strongly to the need for not only peace in Ukraine, but also a lasting, credible and just peace that can be overseen and that will continue as a contribution to peace in Europe and hence peace in the alliance. And today we will have meetings on how to work better together in Europe, inside the framework of the collective defense alliance of NATO. We need to strengthen bonds to the European Union. The European Commission came out recently with its white book on European defense, Readiness 2030. Norway is not a member of the EU as such, but we are fully integrated into this defense efforts, and we will continue to strengthen our relations around Rearm Europe and all the other initiatives. We have a significant defense industry in Norway, and we very much agree that we need to innovate, we need to standardize, we need to procure together, and we need to develop a stronger industrial defense base in Europe as a contribution to raising our military capabilities also on this side of the Atlantic. This is not to replace American defense industry. This is a solid supplement. There's space for both because we will use much more resources on defense in the coming years, and that has to be also a contribution to a stronger European defense base. So I look forward to meeting with Kaja Kallas, the High Representative for Foreign Policy of the European Union, and that we all will sit down and discuss how NATO-EU partnership can be developed. And because of everything that has happened over the last months, we've seen a strong coming together around the coalition of the willing, which has been led by very ably by President Macron and by Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And like the UK, Norway, Turkey, Iceland and Canada have all been contributing to this. And here we also see a strong coming together around the idea of strengthening defense, strengthening defense industries. And working together in Europe also adds more dimensions of security to the package. As I said said, the collective defense is and shall remain in NATO, but societal resilience, energy security, and all the other aspects of security that are not directly defense-related are becoming more important, and the European cooperation is important to deal with all those. Thank you.
Why do you believe that also the United States are still assessing Russia as a direct threat?
Well, that's based on the conversations we had yesterday. I feel that that was broadly agreed in the room, and it's important for us to make sure that this is a unified perspective in the alliance.
5%. How realistic is that?
There is agreement that we need to do more, and that we will work towards the summit in The Hague on maybe setting a new target. These discussions are ongoing. 5% is, of course, much more than the US itself spends, and it's a very high ambition, and we are not ready to commit to a number at this time. Just as it's important to spend more, it's also important to spend more smartly. I've been a defense minister myself, and I know that it's perfectly possible to waste defense money if you don't use them smartly. So, which also means standardization, joint procurement, and making sure that you're not just adding to the costs of military equipment. So these conversations have to be taken in the alliance and serious, and let's see what we end in The Hague. But I think there's a good mood around spending more together, and that is also very much what we will discuss today, which is how to use this to strengthen the European defense industrial base.
Minister, do you have the feeling that now NATO allies have to do whatever the US is demanding, like not to risk the relationship?
I've neither known nor ever before I thought that we need to do whatever a member state is demanding. But I think that the argument that Europe needs to take a larger share of the total defense package is a fair one. And it's not a new one. It's an argument the Americans have been holding for many years over both Democratic and Republican presidents. And they are right. We need to do more. But we also need to do more in a way that strengthens the European dimension of this. So it's not only volumes, it's also the enablers, the capacity to have to participate in a higher level of European operations without always resorting to American backstopping. So this is part of the discussion. But of course, we also use this opportunity, many of us, to reconfirm the key principles that lies behind this alliance in the first place, which is the full commitment to international law, to the principles of sovereignty, and the need to have a good cooperation not only on defense but also all other aspects of transatlantic togetherness.
Is USA going to leave from defending Europe?
That I have heard nothing here that suggests that. Quite on the contrary, we heard also publicly a very clear statement from Marco Rubio during his press conference and his meetings yesterday that the US is committed to NATO, committed to Article 5, and that there is an expectation, as I just mentioned, that Europe takes a larger share of that shared burden. Thank you.
Meetings went well. Secretary Rubio assured very clearly that US will be committed to NATO. But also we discussed a lot that Europe part must do more, as we do. Many countries already increasing their own defense investments, as Estonia. We have decided that we are going to increase our defense investments from the next year already up to 5%. So we do expect as well that all the other members reaching at least like 3.5% of GDP. And I do hope that we are going to agree that during the Hague summit this summer. But also the Ukraine discussion went well. Everyone understood that Putin is not about peace right now. He's asking more. And he's not asking only more about Ukraine. He's just putting new conditions on the table. And it's pretty sure that there must be some kind of red lines on the timetable that President Trump cannot wait anymore. So we called as well up to the more heavy sanctions, also push Putin under pressure that finally to have a ceasefire and start talk about sustainable and long-lasting peace. And today we're discussing European funding. So Kaja Kallas is going to meet us as a NATO. And we have this 800 billion package from the European Commission, which is, of course, most coming from the member states. But it is important as well that we will show to NATO and also US partners that not only the member states, but also European Union is able to act to increase our defense capabilities. So, thank you.
Do you believe that the United States still share the assessment that Russia is a direct threat?
Yes, we were discussing about that, and it's pretty obvious that in Europe, at least, only Russia is a threat. But we understand as well that everything is connected. We see the North Korean troops fighting in Ukraine, in the middle of Europe, as well. Iran is supporting militarily Russia directly, and China is enabling actually Russia waging this war. And we were discussing about that, and it's obvious for everybody. This is not only about Russia and Ukraine, it's about a global approach, and Russia will remain a threat for NATO.
Estonia is working its way towards 5%, but how do you convince the other allies to do so, as Secretary Rubio wants them to do?
We are convincing them to show with our actions that it is possible. So we have pensioners, we have social systems, we have education systems, health systems, but we understand that we need to invest heavily. Of course, for us as a border state to Russia, it's an existential question. But I think for now, everyone in Europe understands that any kind of military aggression from Russia to and against NATO, everyone will pay. And it's much more cheaper to invest right now than to have consequences. And I do hope that everyone will understand that. And be honest, I would have been more happy that this kind of mode would have been like 10 years ago. But at least we have it now. So we see the German decisions, Finland, Sweden, many other countries now putting heavily more in. And this is a good perspective. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have no big announcement. I just want to share my feelings that the NATO ministry is going very good. So far, so good. Today is a NATO day, so it's also a moment of public diplomacy, and I'm looking forward to meeting with Kaja Kallas.
Why do you have the impression that the US is still sharing the assessment that Russia is a direct threat and not maybe a potential business partner?
Again.
Why do you have the impression that the US administration is sharing the assessment that Russia is a direct threat and not maybe becoming a potential business partner for them?
I share this assessment because what I have heard yesterday from Marco Rubio.
Your country is a big spender on defence, but how are you convincing other allies to get to this 5% target that Rubio is asking for them?
We serve by example. We take care of our security. We do a lot, not only military expenditures, but of course also we are doing quite a lot on the front of our protection, our ability to put off Russian influence of Czechia, given, for example, sanctions against GRU officers. So those things are serving as an example and also as a motivation for other allies to follow. But it's their domestic debates, of course.
Did you see signals from US that they are ready to renew the help for Ukraine, military aid? Any signals to support military support for Ukraine from US?
As far as I know, this is happening actually. So, I haven't heard about new packages as such, but this is for the US domestic debate. No, not for me. Of course, I would like such thing to happen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Good morning.
Today we have a very important meeting, NATO-EU meeting. Of course, European Union and NATO are very natural partners, as majority of European Union members are also members of NATO. So our collective defense is based in NATO. And of course, yesterday we heard Secretary Rubio also saying that they are committed to NATO, but European countries should be stronger. So that is exactly what we are doing. We have the white paper on defense, which is talking about how we can unblock funds to do more for defense, to do more for capabilities, to do more for cooperation, and eventually make NATO stronger. So this plan goes actually hand in hand with the NATO's capability targets. It helps the NATO countries, European countries also to fulfill their capability targets that we have in NATO. So in turn, it makes the whole of NATO stronger, which is our goal.
Did you get reassurances from Secretary Rubio that in discussions with Vladimir Putin, the U.S. will not make concessions that go against the interests and the red lines of Ukraine and Europe?
It was stressed that nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, and of course Ukraine and Europe need to be agreeing to whatever is discussed, because this is all happening in Europe. So yes, he was giving us assurances about this.
The new US tariffs could have a strong negative impact on Europe's ability to invest in defense. Do you think that these tariffs are in line with Article 2 of NATO, and how are you going to address this issue?
As I've said before, there are no winners in trade wars, and of course all these tariffs are not very positive development, because if we have like natural partners like America and Europe are, if we have a trade war, then our adversaries are looking on the side. So of course our trade people are dealing with trade negotiations to have a more positive outcome of this, but of course we are also ready to defend our interest. It is clear that it raises prices for the consumers and companies, and eventually it's not good. But on the defense side, we really need to move with the proposals. Of course, we need to also develop our economies to be able to fund that defense spending that we need to do.
Yesterday, Marco Rubio said that the U.S. will remain in NATO. In addition to the tariffs, that was the big news of the day. So what does it tell us about the state of the alliance when something such self-evident is making headlines?
You're the journalist, so you can tell what it means. But I think it's important because there has been a lot of what is the right word? We are living in very unpredictable times, and therefore maybe it's good to reassure the things that seem self-evident and give the reassurance that, you know, some things are still in place. So I think that's why it was important for everybody to hear this, and this is how we move forward.
Today marks NATO's 76th birthday. What would be the greatest gift for you?
It is that NATO is 76 years, and it's fully functional, and it's actually working the way we thought NATO is working when we joined the defense alliance like it is. We are talking about military plans, we are talking about capability targets, all this, and of course what is very important for me is how NATO cooperates with the European Union. We can complement each other because, as I said, majority of European countries are also NATO countries. So I think this is a good platform to go forward.
Why do you believe that the United States still see Russia as a direct threat and not as a potential business partner?
Well, the picture is quite clear. I mean, Russia has attacked another country and hasn't given up its goals. They are spending more than 9% of their GDP on the military, so they will want to use it again unless we are strong enough, unless we do our own homework when it comes to defense spending, then we are under threat ourselves. And I think it is also more global because all the aggressors or would-be aggressors of the world are actually really carefully watching right now. Good. Thank you. All the best.
Good morning. I will speak in Spanish first, but I will take your question in any language. Nos enfrentamos a retos muy diversos en el mundo actual. Se puso de relieve ayer y hoy, desde luego, en la reunión con la alta representante se volverá a poner de relieve. Tenemos una amenaza a nuestra seguridad por la guerra de agresión de Rusia a Ucrania, pero también hay muchos otros aspectos que hoy desafían los proyectos de vida de nuestros ciudadanos. La ciberseguridad, y tenemos que proteger nuestros datos, tenemos que proteger también el buen funcionamiento de nuestros hospitales, la integridad de nuestros sistemas electorales. Tenemos que luchar contra la desinformación que intenta dividir nuestras sociedades e intenta hacer del proyecto europeo un proyecto más débil. Tenemos que garantizar la integridad de nuestro mercado único y tenemos que luchar contra el terrorismo. Contra todo ello y frente a todo ello necesitamos unidad. Unidad entre aliados en la OTAN y unidad entre socios europeos y la Unión Europea y la OTAN. Por eso es tan importante la jornada de hoy en la que vamos a intercambiar con la alta representante. Más seguridad europea, más autonomía y más soberanía europea en materia de seguridad es también una OTAN más fuerte. Y para ello los europeos, y ayer lo expresé y hoy lo volveré a expresar, los europeos tenemos que dotarnos de más capacidades, de mayor interoperabilidad entre nuestros ejércitos y también de un comando y de una cadena de mando más interrelacionada y más operativa. Tenemos que integrar mejor nuestras industrias de defensa y eso lleva inevitablemente a repensar la financiación europea de todo lo que toca a nuestra seguridad. Es importante que todo eso se siga haciendo en torno a los valores del proyecto europeo que España va a defender siempre y que son valores democráticos, valores de tolerancia, valores de pluralismo y valores de solidaridad. Ayer también tuve la ocasión, en un encuentro bilateral, de trasladar a mi colega ucraniano la solidaridad y el apoyo de España tanto tiempo como sea necesario para que Ucrania gane la paz. Y tanto en la reunión que mantuvimos ayer con él como en el encuentro bilateral, dejé muy claro que todos tenemos que dar el mismo contenido a la palabra paz. Una paz en Ucrania es una paz justa y duradera y una paz global. No puede ser un paréntesis entre dos guerras y, desde luego, no puede tener un premio para el agresor. Los principios de libertad, de democracia, de integridad territorial, de soberanía no son principios negociables y por eso Rusia tiene que decir sí al alto el fuego que está encima de la mesa dentro de un periodo razonable. No podemos estar eternamente esperando. Ucrania ha demostrado su voluntad para la paz. Ahora le toca a Rusia demostrar si quiere paz o si prefiere seguir con su guerra de agresión. Y también mantuve encuentros con mis colegas de Eslovaquia, de Lituania y de Rumanía, y todos ellos me trasladaron el agradecimiento de España por su participación en la seguridad del flanco este de la OTAN y de la seguridad europea.
Política interna. Ayer hubo una reunión del ministro Cuerpo con el PP para hablar de aranceles y el PP ha dicho que le pareció una reunión superficial, que fue poco más que lo anunciado antes por el presidente. ¿Qué le parece esta primera reacción del PP? Y no sé si va a ser posible mantener la unidad con el principal partido de la oposición respecto a qué hacer sobre los aranceles de Trump.
Este es un momento que nos llama a todos a la unidad. Por eso el presidente del Gobierno nos reunió a varios ministros con los agentes sociales, empresariales, sindicatos. Este es un momento en el que necesitamos unidad dentro de España, también de las fuerzas políticas y, como estamos demostrando ayer y hoy, entre aliados y entre socios europeos. El Partido Popular tiene que decidir si quiere participar de esa unidad o quedarse fuera. El Partido Popular tiene que decidir si quiere estar con la democracia española o, como está haciendo en sus pactos con Vox, con la extrema derecha. Si quiere estar con Europa y el proyecto europeo en este momento en que necesita unidad, o si está con aquellos que están por debilitar y contra el proyecto europeo. Y si está al lado de los proyectos de vida de los españoles, que es el escudo que está el gobierno poniendo para protegerlos, o está contra ellos. Y, por supuesto, tiene que decidir si quiere ser una oposición de Estado en un asunto de Estado, como es al que nos enfrentamos hoy en día en materia de seguridad y en materia comercial, o simplemente una oposición de desgaste al gobierno como ha venido siendo hasta ahora. Es al señor Feijóo de decidir dónde quiere estar.
Ministro, ¿cómo se va a llegar al 2% sin comprometer medidas como las que ayer anunció el presidente de apoyo a las empresas?
El compromiso de España con el 2% es público, es conocido. Año a año se está incrementando el presupuesto de defensa y se está incrementando 12 veces más el gasto social. Este gobierno encontró el presupuesto de defensa en su nivel más bajo de la historia de España, en el 0,9, y se ha ido incrementando un 10% año a año e, insisto, incrementando 12 veces más el gasto social, con partidas históricas en becas, con incrementos en las pensiones, con incrementos también en el salario mínimo interprofesional. Este gobierno demuestra que no solamente se puede incrementar el gasto social, sino que el crecimiento de España es en estos momentos 4 veces superior a la media europea, que se puede controlar el déficit y la deuda y que se puede también incrementar el gasto de seguridad de los españoles. Por lo tanto, la prueba está ahí y los resultados macroeconómicos también. Yes, sorry.
To leave here with all allies showing how they will get to 5%, but how realistic is that, especially for a country like yours?
So far, we have an agreement among all the allies to reach 2%, and we are all making efforts to reach it. We all realize that there are, at this moment, real challenges for our security. Challenges because of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and challenges that goes from cybersecurity, misinformation, challenges to our security. And I'm sure that we are going to do as much as we can to protect the lives and the security of our citizens. And we will discuss among all of us what's the best ratio in the defense expenditure.
The deadline was last year. Is Spain not endangering the US will to help Europe by spending so little on defense?
We are scaling up our defense expenditure, and the agreement that we have so far, it's 2%, and we are going to reach it. And the commitment of Spain with the security of the eastern flank is out of any doubt. There are almost 3,000 Spanish soldiers that are in different countries, in Slovakia, in the Baltics, in Romania, in the Black Sea. We are also in Turkey. Yesterday I had meetings with the ministers of foreign affairs of Lithuania, of Romania, of Slovakia. All of them were praising the role that Spain and Spain's army is playing in the security of Europe and the eastern flank of NATO. Spain is a very solid ally, and everyone recognizes it.
The new US tariffs could have a strong negative impact on Europe's ability to increase defense spendings. How do you see this issue?
There are two things. United States and Europe, we have the largest trade relationship, and it has been mutually beneficial for decades. And I think it could be better if it continues being so, both with benefits, the United States and European countries. And if there is any difference, I think we can solve it through dialogue. But of course, Europe has a single trade policy and a single market, and we have the instrument and the will to protect them, to protect our enterprises, to protect our workers, to protect our consumers. And I think also that a stronger Europe, and a Europe that has a stronger security sector in its own hands, it's also a way of having a stronger NATO. And it's time for Europe to rethink its security, to increase its capabilities, to increase the interoperability of their security sectors, and also to increase the industry of defense and the European finance for that. All of that will go in favor of the security of our citizens and also will make NATO stronger.
Secretary General has said that NATO is not going to water down definitions for defense spending.
Sorry,
the Secretary General yesterday said NATO is not going to water down definitions for defense spending. Do you think these attempts by Spain, among others, are dead on arrival?
No, I mean, the way we calculate our defense expenditure is the same for all the allies, and we have no claim to do on that, and we are not doing it. Huh? Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to this second day of our meeting of NATO foreign ministers. And it is a pleasure to have the EU High Representative with us today, Award Kaya. The European Union is stepping up its efforts on defense in a major way, and I think we all welcome that. The EU's new white paper for European Defence Readiness 2030 was a major milestone, and we now look forward to further close cooperation in its implementation. The EU is also aiming to play a bigger role in supporting Ukraine. In a more dangerous world, we must all do our fair share. At the same time, continued US commitment to our strong transatlantic alliance remains the bedrock of our security. So today I look forward to discussing how we can further strengthen the bond between Europe and North America and make NATO into a stronger, fairer and more lethal alliance at our summit in The Hague. Thank you to the media for joining us. We will now continue our discussions in just a moment.